All
Today
right.
is May 5th, 2020. It's a Tuesday, about 9 o'clock in the morning my time and a little afternoon your time. This is Agu Obasi, and I am very, very delighted that you have been willing to be interviewed twice now because the first time we interviewed, which was just at the very, very beginning of the COVID epidemic rising across the world, and the pandemic rather, and our audio recording was just not quite the right quality. It would have been difficult for people to understand the responses to the questions that I posed for you. And I want to just tell people a little bit about who you are and how we have come to know one another. You have a long, long history of being an advocate for safety in medical care for everyone involved. You have dual residence, if I understand correctly. Your home country is
Nigeria.
Nigeria, and you currently live in St. Kitts. Is that correct?
Yes, the
With your
country is called St. Kitts and Nevis. You should have missed out the Nevis part.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. And you and your family have been well through COVID, I understand. I'm very happy to hear that. But you've
Yes,
also
ma'am.
dedicated your life as an attorney to really helping with medical safety. You are a fierce advocate. You run a channel on WhatsApp, I think maybe a couple of channels on WhatsApp. And I follow those very carefully and closely, both to really understand medical safety from a broader perspective around the world, but also to be a global citizen and to remember that my place is not just where my feet are and where I was born, but it is a planet that I care for and I care for the people upon it. So it's been a really good opportunity for me. You also happen to be the author of two books, a fiction book and a nonfiction book. Precepts of the Puppet Master is a story about a medical experiment conducted without the consent of human subjects, and it sounds very interesting. And then also a nonfiction called The Medical Malpractice Manual, and this is a patient rights versus providers' responsibilities guide. And I'm really, really happy to have you present today. And I have a few questions if you would be so willing. And also, if there's anything that you would like me to inquire with you about or you would like our listeners to know, please, at the end of the interview, let me know that. So, I have your
Um,
permission to record, yes, Agu?
yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you. Wonderful. So, I would like to just start by talking a little bit about the fact that worldwide we're using technology differently today than we were even 3 months ago. And one of the reasons that you and I went into an initial conversation when we were starting to talk about patient safety and medical safety some several months ago, we were using a platform called Slack, and many people will be familiar with that even if they don't use that platform. It's a platform that was chosen by the Patient Safety Movement Foundation to help unite people around the world in a conversation about what we could do collectively to ensure that there was safe practices on behalf of everyone who is involved in healthcare, whether they're providing that care, receiving that care, or administering that care. And the platform wasn't working well for you and several others. And you raised the fact that WhatsApp has been an application that has been working very, very well. So I would love to hear a little bit more from you, if you would please, about what works well for WhatsApp in the global work that you're doing related to any topic. But I happen to know that safety and medical care is of utmost importance to you.
Yes. Well, once again, Vonda, thank you so much for having me. Yes. As we go through these very trying times, uh, we rely more on online platforms and online apps. And WhatsApp happens for me to be the most convenient because it allows me to have literally a workstation in different countries at the same time. And as you have mentioned, I have different groups on WhatsApp that I use in terms of passing on information, in terms of getting feedback from people, in terms of planning and executing some of the plans that we have. As you know, we are concerned about patient safety and enhancing medical standards in different countries. And WhatsApp allows me to keep in touch with different groups of people who are resident in those countries. And with that, we can then use that to pass relevant information to them and to get them to take action whenever it's required. So I found it to be very, very useful. In fact, essential to the work that we do.
Thank you. I have found it to be very useful as well. It has just so that people are watching, because I think one of the things that people attune to in these interviews that I'm doing is both information about safety and medical care, but also just how we come into focus and communication with each other. I've spent most of my career helping people connect in really useful, proactive, and productive ways. And WhatsApp has been very effective as what I would call a sort of a live news line that comes from people rather than from the limited news sources. And that's not to be demeaning of the excellent journalism that does take place, but we also know that a lot of media is attached to other agendas, commercials that have to be paid for, things of that nature. And so we do get some skewed perspectives if we're only attuning to the public media within our reach. WhatsApp gives that reach person to person. I have heard very specific stories that have come from you and the people that are gathered in the groups that you moderate from Nigeria, and that has been meaningful to me. It has helped me feel as though I'm I'm considering lives rather than uh, uh, tales, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
firsthand
yes,
rather than second, third,
yes,
fourth, and fifth hand nature. With that in mind, it has some limitations, so let's be sure that we're clear about that. It doesn't offer
yes.
this kind of platform that we're using right now. Currently, we're using Messenger through
Yeah,
Facebook, where we get to see each other and we get to record that. I'm recording this on QuickTime, so we're sort of cobbling together some pieces. One of the reasons we're doing that is because we had difficulty with Skype. Skype used to be the only tool we had to connect across nations with video and phone. And it has been a very useful tool and continues to be for a lot of people. But I find that the audio and the recording that we did on Skype several weeks ago to be too unpredictable and not steady. Here we have a steady communication. I can hear you very well. You can hear me very well. And I am recording that. I'll be able to do very minimal editing, if at all. And we can produce this together. So here you are there, and I am here, and we can have a really good feed. Is
yes.
there any other limitation that you think people should know about WhatsApp if they choose to try to use it?
Well, you have so eloquently pointed out to the obvious one, which is there are no filters. It is a basic conversation between individuals. across multiple locations. So the challenge there is that the information that you have has to be verified, because there is no internal mechanism for filtering what is authentic and what is not. The normal process is that before anything goes out in any kind of news media, there has to be a vetting process. On WhatsApp, it's not. So any kind of information can go across, any kind of information can be passed on. So you just have to be careful about what you get on WhatsApp. I've been burned several times with the people passing on information, and I'm relying on that information and then going out with that information and acting on that information. So you have to be careful. But like you have also said, it is a good way of having direct communications with people. It is a good way. The only thing is that just like your conversation with your neighbor, just like your conversation with your friends and colleagues, you just have to understand that you have to verify whatever information that you get from them.
Mm. I want to talk a little bit about that. I think that's a very interesting point. I'll add to yours that I don't think you can edit if I post something and I make a spelling error or something like that, I can't go back and change it. So we're used to that filtered, edited ability. I love the way you create the analogy of how it's like I'm going to talk with my neighbor. I can't edit it if I say something that is, inaccurate, that I'm passing on from a source that got it from an inaccurate source. But what I love what you just said, and I'd like you to speak a little bit more about that. And I'll put my opinion in on this too, and that is it's good for us to question what we're hearing. It gives
Yes.
us that sense that we have a responsibility to have our own opinion rather than to just simply pass on the opinions that are given to us. I would love for you to speak more about that. How does that affect the quality of community, whether it's online or in your backyard?
Well, we live in a global village. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we have a responsibility towards each other to ensure that the message that we pass on to each other, especially if we expect people to rely on that information to be accurate. Now, it doesn't mean that every time that we will get it right, but we owe a responsibility to ourselves to ensure that if we're going to pass on any kind of information, you would make sure that that information is not skewed in certain respects. It's not an information that has a given agenda. And that happens a lot. I have seen very creative and very false information being circulated, not just on WhatsApp, but I mean across platforms. I've seen that. So we have that responsibility to ensure that when we pass on that information, because we don't want to be used as a tool for somebody's wrong agenda. We don't want to be a vessel for passing on wrong information. For example, on our Facebook page, sometimes we want to pass on an information. Since this pandemic started, I've been trying to push across to my people in Nigeria that we have to be careful. We have to exercise caution, social distancing, having all the precautionary measures. Now, sometimes when you have that orientation, you can become a vessel for another person's agenda. And so they can push an information that is not accurate and you can roll with it. So you need to be very, very careful. What I normally do is I conduct what you call the verification test, which is every information that I get, I look at who sent it to me, how credible is that source? Can I independently verify it? And if I can independently verify it, what platform is that independent person from? For example, if I have something that is political, for example, I want to go back and look at, am I getting it from Fox News, from CBS, from CNN? You know, those kind of platforms, you need to make sure that whatever place you're verifying your information from, it has to be credible. WhatsApp is a wonderful tool, but it has to be used in such a way that you would know that the information that you're passing on, the information that you're receiving, first of all, is accurate. And if you're going to pass it on, it is also accurate.
Great point. There are two things that I think might be interesting for viewers here to hear a little bit more about. The first is that sense of the sources that we trust and verifying. I appreciate your litmus test for, who is it coming from? What is the trusted source? And also just, our own intuition sometimes. One of the things that I've found, and I'm wondering if this is true for you, so often, even myself, I will admit, there are certain things I don't want to hear. It maybe goes against what I feel or what I've heard, or even against the people that I trust or the sources that I trust. And so I will sometimes tune out or choose not to listen. And for me, that's a red flag or an indicator that I should listen even more. In other words, I would like to hear everything and then do due diligence to research on my own, and then come to my conclusion, or just come to the conclusion that there are a lot of perspectives and that it's maybe okay for me not to put a stake in the ground and say, this is the final answer and it will be that way forever and ever and ever. Because even with science, as we know, a good scientist is always looking for the next veil to be lifted, the next awareness to be seen. And then many scientists put that alongside their own spiritual nature and their own trust in their life and the life of their full understanding of knowing, which is sometimes very fact and data based, alongside that I'm going to dare say, God-given right to come to my belief inherently rather than imposed upon me. So I'm curious. I'm not expecting you to agree with me so much, but I'm very curious about your perspective on that, and specifically, the sense that we can receive from many different perspectives and then arrive at our own.
Well, I divide information that I get into two. One is my spiritual orientation. Okay? My spiritual orientation is couched in steel. You can't shift it. So if I'm getting any information that doesn't agree with my spiritual orientation, and to be clear, my Christian spiritual orientation, you're not going to move me. It doesn't matter. I really don't want to hear it. Okay? But I also have information that relates to my career, that relates to the work that I do, that relates to the fact that I'm a lawyer, that relates to the fact that I have responsibilities towards people. Now, in that perspective, I keep an open mind. What I want to find out is, what is the truth about this situation? I don't have any preconceived notion. I mean, this is very relevant in terms of what has been happening recently. As you know, we are involved in certain respects in holding certain entities accountable for what is going on. And one of the things that we have found is that there are vested interests that are trying to influence certain narratives.
Yes.
Okay? There are people who would just tell you, well, this is what the situation is. Don't look at any other place. I don't do that. I have an open mind. Let the evidence lead us to where it will lead us. I don't shut out any kind of information. I want to hear it all. I want to get it all. It is only in hearing it all, in seeing all the picture, in having the whole picture, that you can draw your own deductions. And your deduction has to be based on verified facts.
Yeah.
So that is my own attitude. I don't shut anything down, no matter how unpalatable it is. I want to hear it. I want to hear it, and I want to add it to my bank of knowledge.
Yeah.
So that when I begin to synthesize and analyze and dissect what I need to do, I can draw from it, no matter how unpalatable it is.
I appreciate that perspective, and I share it with you. And even though it's hard to hear sometimes, I do. It's a red flag for me if I stop listening. Then I know that I am. Then I am forcing my own agenda rather than trying to get to the clearest picture that I can. I'd like to, if you don't mind, and I'm pretty sure you don't, I'd like to move toward the topic that you and I care so much about, along with our dozens and hundreds and thousands of colleagues around the world, and that is safe care in medicine. And it's been particularly important at this time of life right now because of what's going on with COVID-19. And if it's of interest to you, I would love, Agu, to really hear you speak about the nature of making mistakes and the difference between making honest mistakes and being transparent about that, so that we can learn, so that we do not cord ourselves off from useful information and thus useful learning. Therefore, we can continue to improve upon the safety and quality of medical care, whether we're delivering it, receiving it, or administering it. That is very different for me than intentionally letting an agenda override the interest of safety in medical care. For example, profits being prioritized ahead of the safety of caregivers, of the people that they're caring for, the environments in which they're caring in. So I would love to just hear you speak about that from your perspective as an attorney, and as someone who has spent a lot of attention and time in this arena.
Yes. Well, it is a trying time. It is a time where we should all be sober and reflect on what is going on, because it is scary in certain respects, but it is also a learning opportunity. Right from the inception of the outbreak, we have insisted that people should be transparent. In my own honest opinion, I think that one of the problems why this pandemic has been as devastating is because of the fact that within this initial outbreak, people were not transparent. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is that when we look at the feedbacks that we're getting from health practitioners, there seems to be this inability to focus on building up the immune system, because that, for me, is a crucial aspect of treatment. a lot of people, and of course, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know how accurate that information is, but a lot of people have said that the ventilators that are being used are not as useful in terms of being able to tackle the situation. And even in my country, Nigeria, people have also raised the issue that we need to know the kind of protocols that you are applying for people who are recovering from this sickness. We need to know. We don't know. We really don't know what you guys are doing. We are seeing figures, but we don't know. We are not able to know exactly what you're doing so that we can improve on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's even people who are going as far as saying that there is a deliberate attempt to get everybody to have the disease, the COVID-19 disease, to test positive to the COVID-19 disease. That there seems to be that interest in having cases arising in various locations across Nigeria. Now, for me, that is concerning because it would seem that there is an interest in ensuring that more funds are given to certain people or certain governments or certain entities just because they are raising up their numbers. Now, all this goes to the fact that when it comes to healthcare, there has to be a level of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
This is so important because our life cannot be equated into the amount of people's lives cannot be equated into that. Just before they started, we initiated a process where we wanted to call other stakeholders in Nigeria for us to look at our healthcare system and how healthcare or health facilities are being administered. We wanted to look at the standards that we have in Nigeria. We wanted to have that conference in April, just before all this started. Now, what is happening now is re-emphasizing the importance of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, not just in Nigeria, across the world, we need to look at how do we treat every patient? How do we ensure that we remove the issue of profit? We de-emphasize the issue of profit over quality health care, over appropriate health treatment. That is a crucial issue. And I think that all of us as healthcare advocates should come together and really examine each system and ensure that anything that is being done to celebrate profit over healthcare should be discouraged, really. Because life, I mean, what price tag can you put to life? You can't put any price tag to life, really. So yes, I agree with you. There are certain people who want to make the most from this unfortunate situation. It is sad to observe. It is unfortunate to say, but that is the reality of it. Some people want to make money from this. Some people want to show up their profit margin from this. As thousands and thousands and thousands of people are dying, some people are more interested in what they're going to make from this. And we should look at this really and find out how we ensure that never again would the lives of people be sacrificed on the altar of profit.
Yeah, thank you. That's very clearly put. I think I will use those words to wrap up here for this interview and to add to maybe our list of, going back to your thoughts earlier around having your own sense of perspective, taking in as much information as possible, rooted in your one's spiritual nature and sense of that which is much bigger than the one person that we that we strive to protect our life and that of our families. That is that sense of, if we have transparency with ourselves, we can better have transparency with each other. And I hearken to the work of my late husband, Yogi Raj Charles Bates, who was a fierce advocate for people knowing themselves, because he believed, and I think it's accurate, that sometimes we don't even know our own agendas. We don't even know that we are running an agenda in the background that could mean that we're trying to strive for, our own profit making or our own whatever it is that we might be going for. So I would just close by saying that it is my hope for every person on this planet to know themselves well enough to know when they might be getting in the way of the well-being of themselves and the whole of our planet, including all the life on it, not just the humans. That's a personal perspective, and uh, I don't expect that others will share it, but I feel compelled to say that at this time. Any closing thoughts? Thank you so much for your time today, and I would welcome any closing thoughts that you may have before we conclude.
Well, just to, I don't want to end this without expressing my gratitude to those who are on the front lines, the healthcare professionals who are sacrificing so much so that we can be safe. I just
I
hello.
You came back. The last thing we heard was you wanted to give your respects to those on the front line, and then it started to cut
Yeah.
out. If you'd like to repeat what you said.
Yes, I just want to express my gratitude to those on the front line, the healthcare professionals who sacrifice so much to keep us safe. I salute their sacrifice. They are heroes, each and every one of them. I thank them for their service. I continue to reach out to them in terms of prayer. And I urge each and every one of us to continue to pray for them. They are such brave men and women, and we owe them all the gratitude. And I just want to end on that note.
I join you in that. Thank you so much for this time today. I really appreciate that you were willing to come to this forum twice. And who knows, maybe people will ask you to come back. And I'm on this 7-month trek to Capitol Hill, speaking with people across this nation and other nations like we are today, to help our legislators understand how critically important it is to prioritize safety in medicine, and not just because of COVID, but because of all that we've learned over the last 100 years or so with regard to our healthcare across the nation, across the world, I mean. Agu, thank you so much. And if you'll
Thank
just stand
you.
by here, I'll close the recording and then we can do a quick debrief.